Welcome to the deep dive.
Hello.
Today, we're taking a plunge into a world, well, a world few of us can really imagine. Life inside a Siberian convict prison. This is mid-19th century stuff.
Yeah, and our source material for this, it's incredibly powerful. It comes from these sort of fragmented recollections, excerpts from Dostoyevsky's The House of the Dead.
Right. Think of what you've given us as like pieces of a mosaic. Glimpses into this harsh, hidden society, all seen through the eyes of one man, Alexander Petrovich.
Exactly. It's not a neat, linear story. It's more like a collection of, observations, little anecdotes, memories.
And our mission, really, based on these sources you've provided, is to navigate these fragments. They can be pretty jarring sometimes. We want to cut through that density, understand the stark realities, but also maybe uncover those surprising moments of humanity.
And get a sense of the complex people living there.
Yeah, this is your shortcut, basically, to being well-informed about this really intense, unique experience.
Okay, let's unpack it.
So let's start with the setting. Where does this all take place?
Well, the sources put us in this Siberian town. It's described as having, simple people, almost antique manners, a bit untouched by time, it sounds like.
And the officials there, they're like the local nobility.
Right. Either Siberians who've been there forever or people who've come over from Russia.
Yeah. Why would they come all the way out to Siberia?
Well, the sources are pretty clear on that. High pay, travel allowances.
Yes, perks.
The perks, exactly. And this prospect of building a future, maybe even solving the, quote, problem of life. Some just stayed, resolved it right there.
So for a convict arriving, it must feel like the absolute edge of the world, being cast out to the extreme point of the town, as the source says.
Yeah, and we meet Alexander Petrovich, the narrator, through his first reactions, which are bewildering.
Right, he's got this reputation on the outside, learned, reads a lot, maybe well-connected, but inside, he just keeps to himself. Completely.
There's this really striking story early on, isn't there? Someone from town tries to visit him shortly after he arrives.
Oh, yeah. And instead of, welcoming a connection, he just gets confused, starts muttering.
Gets angry and then just runs away, flees.
It's such a stark image. It shows how cut off he is, not just from the world he left, but maybe even from this new one he's entered.
And the physical reality inside the prison, immediately oppressive.
Barracks holding maybe 30 prisoners each. Beds packed incredibly tight, almost touching.
And in winter, they're locked in from nightfall, so the work just continues inside.
And the chains. Can't forget the chains, worn constantly.
The sound is described specifically as clear and ringing when they walk. Imagine that being the constant soundtrack.
Arriving, the sensory hit must be overwhelming.
Oh, it's vivid, thick smoke, this heavy, mephitic atmosphere, basically a foul, noxious smell.
Obscene language everywhere, rattling chains, insults, cynical laughter.
Yeah, the sources really emphasize the first few days are the most painful.
And the narrator feels like a complete outsider right away, facing hostility from the others.
Yes, general hostility. But, almost paradoxically, the source hints that even then, right at the beginning, he spots these little signs of potential sympathy from some people.
Interesting. Amidst all that darkness. Okay, so moving past that initial shock, what about the prisoners themselves? Who are these people?
It's an incredible mix, according to the sources. They're sent from all the Russias. Criminals from every possible background, every kind of crime.
You've got peasants who apparently killed someone over an onion.
Right next to murderers, smugglers, even nobles like the narrator himself. It's a real cross-section.
And this mix creates its own weird social structure inside, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The sources point out a key difference. Those serving a fixed term versus those imprisoned forever.
How did they see each other?
Well, the lifers, understandably, looked at the others with a kind of detachment. They knew they weren't getting out, while the others held on to that hope.
And the general vibe, the day-to-day atmosphere.
Brutal. Described as scandal and calumnies raining amongst them like hail. Life as a constant hell, a perpetual damnation.
Wow. Yet there's still this enforced submission, right, to the internal rules, the prison's own customs.
Yeah, the unwritten laws. Though, naturally, some characters, the indomitable ones, resisted that pretty hard.
What really struck me was the convicts' attitude towards their own crime.
Oh yeah, that's fascinating. Many seem to hate society, believe they were somehow in the right, and now feel like absolved because they've done their time.
It's a stark contrast to the few who apparently felt real guilt.
It suggests some deep psychological coping, maybe, or just this profound grievance against the whole system.
And then there's that almost unbelievable idea. Prisoners wanting to be sent there, committing crimes on purpose.
It sounds crazy, but the sources explain it. For some, life outside painful freedom, terrible work, insecurity was actually worse than the predictable brutality inside.
It just flips everything you think about punishment on its head, speaks volumes about the desperation out there.
Definitely. And the sources also talk about different classes of prisoners. Military versus civilian, first versus second class.
And there's that chilling comparison some prisoners made.
Right, the ones who'd been in disciplinary companies back in Russia. They said the Siberian prison was paradise compared to their purgatory.
Paradise. That tells you conditions elsewhere must have been unimaginable.
It does. And conditions also varied a bit within this prison. First or third class prisoners, political prisoners sometimes had slightly better deals. Little houses, no uniform, heads not shaved.
And adding another layer of complexity prejudice among the convicts.
Oh yeah. Peasants looking down on other peasants for subtle reasons. Contempt for anyone seen as simple or amiable.
And weirdly, respect for guys who seemed puffed up or were good at insults.
Bizarre, isn't it? It just shows how even in total degradation, people create hierarchies and value systems. Twisted ones, maybe, but systems nonetheless.
So beyond that atmosphere, what was the core of daily life?
Forced labor, that was the main thing. Long days of summer taken up entirely by hard work.
Any specific examples?
Breaking up an old ship stuck in the ice, repairing a brick kiln. Sounds relentlessly physical.
And driving a lot of the internal stuff, or at least their moods, was money.
Absolutely central. The sources say convicts are passionately fond of money, thinking about it almost as much as freedom.
Just having a few kopecks, a few pennies, was half consolation.
Yeah, and having none made them sad, restless, even ready to commit more crime right there inside the prison.
And this desperation for money created a whole internal economy, right? An illicit one.
Thriving. Convicts having trades wasn't just useful, it was a natural and imperious requirement. People found ways to buy and sell.
Even rags had value. Government property pawned.
Yep. And usury loan sharking was rampant. Fabulous rates of interest. Desperate people paying crazy amounts for tiny loans.
And smuggling spirits, of course. Vodka.
Naturally. Gazin is mentioned as a key figure there. The sources even note the supply chain was corrupt. The supplier watering down the vodka before it even got inside.
Corruption breeds corruption, I guess. Even there.
Seems so.
What about connections to the outside? Anything beyond, say, work parties?
Well, interaction with women outside the prison was rare, difficult, and risky.
And expensive, the sources say. Prodigious sums needed.
Exactly. But still, the narrator mentions seeing unexpected love scenes. That basic human need for connection, finding a way, however unlikely.
Okay, so you're surrounded by this vast free steppe. Why weren't escapes more common? They seem infrequent.
The sources suggest a few reasons. Maybe a lack of, collective spirit or just opportunity. The strict military discipline. Plus, the town's location made a quick getaway hard.
Planning was key, often involving trying to bribe or find a sympathetic guard.
Right, and there's a detailed account of one specific attempt involving a V.
The one the narrator dislikes calls him a coward, an informer, though technically a political prisoner.
Yeah, him. And Kulikov, who's described as a criminal from the special section, ex-soldier, versatile, full of energy.
They plan it, but there's suspicion about a missing soldier, Chilkin.
And the authorities react really quickly once it's discovered.
And the other convicts' reaction to the failure. That was complex.
Very. First, rage, because it brought heat on everyone. Then dejection that it failed. But then this weird shift to scorn for the guys who got caught.
Saying things like, tip-top fellows, you can't hold a candle to them.
Yeah. It's this strange mixed admiration for trying, but contempt for messing it up.
So within this brutal world, certain individuals really stand out in the narrator's memory. Let's touch on a few, not just a list, but examples of the humanity or lack thereof.
Okay, well, there's Gazin again, the violent drunk smuggler, described as genuinely cruel, malicious.
And the way they disarmed him was strange. Just standing in front of him, facing his rage without fighting back until he fizzled out.
A tactic born of necessity, it seems. Then you have the old believer.
Calm, respected as grandfather, but inwardly tormented.
Yeah, by this profound, incurable melancholy, sobbing quietly at night, praying alone on the stove. A picture of contained suffering.
But then there are positive figures too, like Ali.
Oh, Ali stands out. Young mountaineer, exiled just for following his brother. Universally liked gay, affable.
Worked calmly. devout in his own faith, learned Russian fast, good at crafts.
The narrator calls him an exceptional being, a real light in that place.
And Akim Akimich. He seems important for practical kindness.
Definitely. Described as orderly, maybe a bit pedantic or narrow-minded, but he showed real practical help to the narrator right at the start, getting him a mattress, a blanket.
Simple things that mean the world in that context.
Absolutely. Then you have figures like Orlov, almost terrifying in his resistance.
Intrepid, hard to restrain, but calm, not boastful. Planned an escape after a flogging.
Yeah. And reacted with haughty contempt when asked about repentance. He's like this unbroken, dangerous spirit.
And Bakluchin, the sapper, he sounds like the opposite the life of the party.
Totally. Gayest, most agreeable, became an intimate friend of the narrator. Professional joker, great mimic, the guy who organized the prison theater.
But even he has a dark backstory, right? Killing a German on a dare.
A reminder that even the likable ones were there for serious reasons. And his punishment, 4,000 strokes.
4,000, it's almost unimaginable. Designed to break someone completely. Sent him to the special section.
A particularly harsh part of the prison, yeah. And there's so many others mentioned briefly. Kernev, dangerous but stupid. Aef, the informer. The tragic Lomov brothers.
Ruined by a corrupt major, ending up stabbed and punished further.
Gavrulka, the cheerful tramp who admitted murder. Each one adds another stroke to this incredibly grim but human portrait.
Despite all this darkness, the sources do show moments of light, don't they? Rituals, small freedoms, breaks in the routine.
Yeah, they do. The bathing ritual, for example. Sounds like chaos, dirt, packed bodies, water everywhere. But maybe a rare moment of shared physical experience. Cleansing, even.
And religion played a significant role.
It seems so. Convicts went to church, Lenten services, communion. The image of their chains clanking during prostration is powerful.
They clung to literal interpretations like equal before God, mercy on the thief.
Right. Even the authorities handed out Easter eggs. And Isaiah Fomich, the Jewish prisoner, his loud prayers became this accepted, almost amusing part of the prison soundscape.
What about holidays, like Christmas?
They brought a real shift. A more serious, preoccupied atmosphere. Drinking, fighting, yes, but also chances for sanctioned activities.
The major inspects, imposes order briefly.
And then it dissolves back into chaos the moment he leaves. Special food appears. Sucking pig, goose.
And convict songs, humorous ones about prison, sad ones about lost capital.
Yeah, that phrase seems to cover lost life, freedom, everything.
Yeah.
And there was this intolerant susceptibility. Disturbed the general mood, even a grim one, and the others would shut you down fast.
But the theatrical performance sounds like a real highlight.
Oh, huge. Organized by the convicts, Bakluchin driving it, massive effort on costumes, scenery, a luxurious curtain from paper and linen, painted carefully.
And the audience, pure delight, like children.
Totally. Applauding, calling out names. The source mentions specific comic moments. There was this real sense of pride, vanity even for the actors, a moment of dignity.
And the hospital, a place of respite.
Definitely. Warmer mattresses instead of bare planks. So feigned illness, fibris catharalis, was common, a way to get a break.
A kindly young doctor is mentioned.
Yes, but it was also where the reality of true suffering was unavoidable. The description of Ustantsev dying of lung disease, his body, it's stark.
Even animals appear briefly. Dogs.
Bull, snow, Koltyapka, the narrator's favorite, mostly ignored by others. And the goat, Vaska.
Loved, but then killed on the major's order, his meat put in the soup. Just arbitrary cruelty.
Yeah, and the steppe eagle, wounded, brought in. A symbol of freedom, it recovers, escapes, and the convicts watch it go. A poignant moment.
Beneath all these events and routines, there's this deep psychological landscape the sources explore.
Very much so. The sheer forced cohabitation, being constantly, inescapably surrounded, is called out as a major form of suffering itself.
And human relationships.
Right.
Incredibly difficult, complex.
Especially for the educated nobles like the narrator. A feeling of ceaseless, hopeless, causeless solitude, even in a crowd. Often contempt for the others.
Yet moments of kindness still broke through. Akimich, Suchilov.
And friendships were weirdly fluid. The source mentions a friend who might rob the narrator, but then feel genuinely bad about it, like the prison environment made him do it.
The psychological impact of punishment, especially flogging, seems profound.
The terror led to feigned illness, even self-harm, just to delay it. And repeated floggings made convicts hardened both in body and mind.
A necessary survival mechanism, maybe, but destructive.
And the sources touch on tyranny itself, almost like a disease. how absolute power can lead to cruelty for pleasure, making moral recovery almost impossible for the powerful.
That observation about authority figures feeling an irritating pleasure in others' dependence is unsettling.
Deeply. But hope, even delusional hope, was vital.
The impossibility of living without it. Like that soldier hoping the colonel's daughter would save him. Irrational, but necessary.
And the tragic fate of those who lost hope, completely seeking suffering, even death.
What about the collective psychology, the group dynamics?
Fascinating stuff. That shift from rage to scorn after the escape failure. Their isolation made them incredibly gullible about rumors, like an inspector general visiting.
And the internal hierarchy, the power plays among them. Respect going to the strong, the cunning.
A brutal, unwritten system.
So finally, let's bring it back to the narrator, Alexander Petrovich. How does he change through all this?
Well, he starts in horror, an outsider, called names like Iron Nose, Fly Killer. But gradually he adapts. Took him nearly a year, he says, to get somewhat used to it.
That first year sounds incredibly bleak, unendurable melancholy.
Yeah. And despite the social gap that always remained, he does find moments of real connection. Ali, Bakluchin, learned to appreciate the kindness shown.
And leaving, what was that like?
Mixed reactions from the others. Some regret, some still aversion. But that poignant scene with Suchilov.
Crying while making him a last cup of tea.
Yeah, humanizes the farewell. Shows those unexpected bonds could form.
So reflecting on this whole deep dive, using the source material you provided, it's a world just full of paradoxes, isn't it?
Incredible, almost unbearable paradoxes. Extreme harshness, right alongside surprising kindness. Degradation, but dignity somehow persists.
The desire for freedom clashing with these strange ways people adapt to confinement.
These fragments, this raw look into the House of the Dead, it really shows us a hidden world, its own rules, its desperate economy, its heroes, its villains.
And those unexpected moments of joy, art, simple solace.
Definitely.
And it leaves us, I think, with a pretty provocative thought drawn right from these observations. What does this world, stripped bare of normal society, normal freedoms, actually reveal about human nature itself?
Does extreme suffering just bring out the worst? Or does it also, maybe surprisingly, reveal this deep resilience, this capacity for art, for connection, that maybe can't be broken?
Something to think about long after we surface from this deep dive.